On the broadcast tonight, President Park Geun-hye strongly criticizes Japan's review of its 1993 apology over the military sexual enslavement of women leading up to and during World War II, calling it a breach of trust between countries. A day before Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to South Korea, North Korea fires 2 short-range projectiles into waters off its eastern coast. And the Korean won closes at a 6-year high against the U.S. dollar, breaking the 1,010 won mark on expansive manufacturing data from the U.S. and China. And day 20 at the World Cup saw Argentina and Belgium advance to the round of 16, but the day stood to prove that sometimes it's not whether you win or lose, it's how thrillingly you play the game for your global audience. Early edition begins now.
I see trees of green, red
늘 남편 먼저,
I see them
늘 자식 먼저.
for me and
레이디 퍼스트라는 말을 믿고 살아온 당신. 오늘만큼은 세상 누구보다 당신이 먼저입니다.
한 분 한 분 특별하게 모시겠습니다.
Excellence in Flight, Korean Air.
It's 5 a.m. in New York, 5 p.m. in Beijing, and 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the 2nd of July here in Seoul. Hello, this is Early Edition at 6. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Geon-young.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us. President Park Geun-hye has slammed the Japanese government's review of a past apology for sexual enslavement of women during World War II.
Right, she was speaking to China's CCTV ahead of President Xi Jinping's state visit to Seoul Thursday. The Korean president accused Tokyo of diminishing the 1993 caost statement in which Japan apologized for forcing women into sexual slavery. Now, saying such an act had only further hurt the victims and broken trust between the countries, President Park said Japan's past system of sexual slavery is a universal human rights violation that remains unresolved today.
The Korean leader then assessed how close Seoul and Beijing have become in terms of security and economic cooperation and said she hoped both would deepen their trust during President Xi's visit.
So the leaders of Seoul and Beijing will have a whole lot on their plates when they meet for the 5th time in 1 year tomorrow.
And our Yurian points out some of the key issues topping their agenda, ranging from efforts to curb North Korea's nuclear ambitions and Japan's history provocations to Seoul and Beijing's free trade negotiations.
Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul this week sends a strong message to the North Korean leadership. It's practically the first time a Chinese leader, after taking office, is coming to South Korea before paying a visit to Beijing's traditional ally, North Korea. When the leaders of South Korea and China meet on Thursday, they will seek ways to substantially develop their strategic cooperative partnership with a strong focus on the North Korea nuclear issue.
Pushing for the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and maintaining peace and stability on the peninsula and solving issues on the peninsula through peaceful means have always been the Chinese government's established policy.
While Beijing will likely oppose recognizing North Korea as a nuclear weapon state, it's uncertain whether the two leaders will highlight more than denuclearizing the Korean peninsula in an expected joint statement following the summit. The South Korean presidential office says Presidents Park and Xi will also discuss reviving the six-nation denuclearization dialogue with Pyongyang. Also topping the agenda for the meeting of the two presidents will be the North's cozying up with Japan as of late, Tokyo's backtracking on a historical apology to Seoul, and Japan's attempts to expand its military presence.
It's only natural the two leaders talk about Japan. They will discuss Japan's push to deny historical facts.
Beijing, involved in a bitter territorial dispute with Tokyo, is expected to seek greater cooperation with Seoul on historical issues. On the economic front, the leaders of Korea and China will agree to speed up negotiations for their free trade agreement and appeal to businessmen from both sides at an investors' forum on Friday. Yurian, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korea fired 2 short-range projectiles from its east coast earlier this Wednesday morning, its 3rd launch in less than a week and the 12th so far this year.
Officials from South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the rockets were fired from a site near Wonsan, flew about 180 kilometers, and are believed to have landed in North Korean territorial waters. The South Korean military is maintaining its vigilance against additional launches.
And a military officer who wished to remain anonymous said that the North may be trying to gain attention ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul on Thursday, or that the launches could also be in response to South Korea's rejection earlier this week of a North Korean proposal to end military hostilities. Well, Japan is wasting little time putting words into action.
One day after Japan's cabinet rubber-stamped a resolution that reinterprets the nation's pacifist constitution, Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato says a team led by high-ranking officials from the defense and foreign ministries has been assembled.
The 30-member council will come up with revisions to the constitution that give Japan greater military freedom. And the Japanese daily Yomiuri Shimbun says the goal is to have the revisions passed at a regular parliamentary session next May. And the Japanese cabinet adopted a resolution on Tuesday that ends a decades-long ban on collective self-defense and will allow it to come to the aid of an ally under attack. And there were mixed reactions to Tokyo's decision to permit itself a greater military role in Asia. Well, Washington says it welcomes the Abe government's move to unshackle itself from Japan's decades-long war-renouncing constitution.
Well, China, on the other hand, which, like Korea, has painful memories of Japan's past military aggression, expressed concerns. Our Park Geun-hye has the details.
China's foreign ministry has expressed concerns over the Abe administration's move, saying it has taken an unprecedented measure that greatly changes Japan's military security policies.
We can't help thinking Japan would change the path of peaceful development that it has stuck to since the end of World War II. We also have noticed that Tokyo's attempt to exercise a right to collective self-defense has been met by strong opposition within Japan.
In a statement Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel said it was an important step for Japan to take a positive role in international security cooperation efforts. The White House also welcomed the move.
We would make clear is that, we believe that this is good potentially for our alliance.
Analysts say a stronger Japanese role serves the U.S. interests in the region, as it should contain China's rising influence in Northeast Asia. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Abe's reinterpretation of the country's pacifist constitution has gone down badly with many inside Japan. Japan's opposition blocs and protesters are demanding that Abe and the ruling coalition go back on their decision. They say the public was not consulted with on an issue that not only changes the pacifist nature of the constitution, but also affects the future of the Japanese people. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
So all this is about Japan taking a historic step away from its post-war pacifism on Tuesday by ending a ban that has kept the military from fighting abroad since 1945, which is a victory for Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, but a move that has riled South Korea and China and is worrying many Japanese voters.
The change, the most dramatic shift in policy since Japan set up its post-war armed forces 60 years ago, will widen Japan's military options by ending the ban on exercising collective self-defense or aiding a friendly country under attack.
So let's take an in-depth look. Dr. Shin Chang-hun joins us live in the studio. Dr. Shin is a senior researcher and director of the Center for Global Governance at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Dr. Shin, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we have a rough understanding of this reinterpretation of Japan's pacifist constitution that now allows Tokyo to basically go to war. So I think the biggest question in the minds of especially many Koreans is, does that mean Japan's armed forces can now enter the Korean peninsula if it believes its ally, possibly the U.S. here, is under attack?
In accordance with general international law and the jurisprudence of the International Court of Justice, it is not right. For instance, the International Court of Justice, in the case concerning military and paramilitary activities in and against Nicaragua, clearly held that in order to exercise the collective self-defense, there must be armed attack of a certain state, and there must be a clear, express invitation by the state, by the victim state of the armed state. So if there is an armed attack against U.S. military bases or the South Korea, then South Korean government has to, give express, invitation to Japanese military
or request
armies.
for military aid, right?
Right. Yes. Right.
So they're like vampires. They cannot come in unless they're invited.
No.
Basically. Well, obviously, Cabinet adopted a resolution outlining the shift, which also, I believe, relaxes limits on activities in UN-led peacekeeping operations, and we believe a gray zone incident, which is short of a full-scale war. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, right. Well, actually, these two examples are not collective self-defense situation. For instance, UN peacekeeping operation is based upon the United Nations Charter, which regulates United Security Council resolutions, United Nations Charter, Chapter 7. And in case of the gray zone, the activities does not, as you mentioned, amount to the full-scale war. For instance, the advisory group of the Prime Minister Abe Shinzo released the report. In accordance with the report, there are two scenarios for the, gray zone. One is the situation in the remote islands. Militia entered the remote islands of Japan. Then this is not full-fledged war situation. And another example is a certain security instability in the U.S. military bases in Japan.
Right. However, despite all this, it sure doesn't look like the Abe government has the full backing of the Japanese public. In fact, I have some figures here. According to a survey by one of Japan's leading newspapers, Nihon Keizai Shimbun, on June 30th, 54% of the Japanese public were against this move, the reinterpretation of the pacifist constitution, while only 29% were supportive. So then why is Prime Minister Shinzo Abe pushing ahead with such an agenda?
It is something related to the, political commitment in his election campaign. He wants to, he restore the current status of Japan as a normal state under the name of the, positive pacifism. So in order to keep this kind of political commitment in his campaign, he wants to push forward the collective self-defense. But the problem is that, the thing is that he chose the track of a certain, awkward, tracks, for instance, by way of the reinterpretation of pacifist constitution. This means the exclusion of the general publics, because normally in the revision procedures there must be referendum. So in that case, the majority of the Japanese public opposes this kind of reinterpretation of constitution.
Well, now Japan has a big foot in the door, and the sky's the limit, according to some experts. Well, Tokyo's latest shift in their military paradigm, I guess it will affect their relations diplomatically, politically, in any way possible with Northeast Asian region and, of course, with the U.S. How should the South Korean government respond to the changes right now?
First of all, I think there are a certain differences of opinions in the priority of the diplomacy in the Northeast Asia. Japan, in order to be the normal states, Japan put the priority on the exercise of the collective self-defense. But South Korea puts emphasis on the, historical reconciliations. Japan has to consider which way would be the most proper way to be the normal states, because, well, Japan already has colonized South Korea. So Japan needs a certain sincere regrets, in terms of the historical reconciliations. So this kind of differences of the priority, it causes a lot of, conflicts in the Northeast Asia.
Basically, resolve all the unresolved from World War II. Basically, only then and then would Japan be able to become a normal state that it pursues it to be. All right, Dr. Shin Chang-hoon, thank you so much for speaking with us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online, connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gon-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
It's been nearly 3 months since the Seoul ferry disaster devastated this nation, and still there are more questions than answers about what happened that day and why no one was saved from the sinking vessel. Well, parliamentary hearings are underway to uncover some of those answers, and on this Wednesday, it was the Commissioner General of the Korea Coast Guard's turn in the hot seat. Our Kim Young-gil reports.
The Special Parliamentary Committee investigating the Seoul ferry accident simply could not understand why not a single person was saved from the sinking Seoul ferry.
When the rescue teams arrived, why didn't they go into the vessel's steering room? Did they know that people were trapped inside?
We weren't able to get into the ship because there were too many obstacles in the way.
Lawmakers also questioned why the Korea Coast Guard told emergency responders to hold off from starting rescue operations when they arrived at the accident site before the Coast Guard. A rival party lawmaker grew angry when asking why the Coast Guard didn't contact passengers on the sinking ferry.
If the Korea Coast Guard had sent a text message or made a phone call to the passengers telling them to abandon ship, they would have. Why didn't the Coast Guard do that?
During Wednesday's hearing, the committee determined that the Coast Guard was not in proper control of the situation in the initial stages of the accident, something that led to false reports early on, including that 370 people had been saved. Opposition lawmakers also voiced opposition to President Park Geun-hye's decision to dismantle the Korea Coast Guard. And while they agree with a plan to establish a new national safety ministry, they say it should be an independent body and not under the watch of the Prime Minister's office. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Well, the Korean won hit its highest level against the U.S. dollar in nearly 6 years this Wednesday, rising to over 1,010 won at one point in intraday trading. The local currency closed at 1,009.2 won against the greenback. And analysts are attributing the won's appreciation to upbeat data, economic data out of the United States and China, which drove stocks on Wall Street to all-time highs and giving investors the confidence to take risks. Now, Seoul-based Nonghyam Investment and Futures said the local currency could further strengthen to the 1,000 level. However, Goldman Sachs expects the strong won to depreciate in the second half of the year to the 1,030 won level.
With growing concerns that the Korean economy might fall into a low-growth trap, many experts are urging the government to raise spending and overhaul old regulations to spur growth and reinvigorate domestic demand. Here's our Hwang Ji-hye with more.
Earlier hopes that the Korean economy might settle into a stable period of recovery were dashed by April's ferry disaster, which made a massive dent in domestic consumption. As a result, private institutions have slashed their growth forecasts. Now, a growing number of economists are asking that a new economic team to be led by the incoming finance minister use all the fiscal and monetary policies at its disposal to spur growth. They say the government should pump money into the economy to help it escape from a low-growth trap, even though that could very well lead to a fiscal deficit. A cut to the key interest rate, economists say, could also be an option.
The central bank's inflation target band is set at a rather high rate, with the nation's inflationary pressure running low. If the pace of recovery continues to remain sluggish, the key rate should be run in a more flexible manner.
Analysts also suggest the government improve its tax policies and cut excessive red tape to boost corporate investment and private spending. Some recent economic data has left some questioning whether Korea is truly in a recovery phase. The nation's output across all industries fell for the second straight month in May, while output in the manufacturing and mining sector dropped 2.7% last month from a month ago. That marked the biggest drop since December 2008 at the height of the global financial crisis. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
And it seems that government policies encouraging women to re-enter the workforce are on the right track and apparently are making an impact. New data shows the economic participation rate for women in Korea rose to a 7-year high last month. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
For the first time in 7 years, the employment rate for women in Korea surpassed the 50% mark last month. Data by Statistics Korea and the Korea Employment Information Service shows the employment rate for women between the ages of 25 and 29 topped 70% for the first time, surpassing that of men in the same age group by nearly 1 percentage point. The greatest improvement in job growth for women came in the age group of 50 to 54, with their employment rate growing nearly 2 percentage points year on year to around 65% last month. Labor market watchers attribute the increase mainly to government policies encouraging flexible working hours and training for women seeking to re-enter the workforce after a break for family reasons. They stress, however, the policy focus from now on is to shift to quality rather than the quantity of jobs provided. The improvement in employment is in line with increasingly prominent roles by women in various sectors of the Korean society. Last year, women accounted for nearly 60% of newly appointed diplomats, up from 20% in 2000. Women also represent more than a quarter of newly commissioned state prosecutors, up from less than 2% in 2000. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And now on to the latest from the World Cup. Day 20 at the 2014 FIFA World Cup, Argentina won its game against Switzerland and the United States lost to Belgium.
Well, on paper, the scores are 1-0 and 1-2 respectively, but there's more to the games than the digits that define them. The first match went scoreless and seemed bound for penalty kicks until we got one goal right at the very end of extra time, which Lionel Messi set up beautifully for Angel Di Maria, sending Argentina to the next round.
But the USA-Belgium match, now there was a game even neutrals couldn't help but watch with their hearts in their mouths, even though it too remained 0-0 heading into extra time. Well, the Americans proved to be quite the Cinderella team, and its goalie Tim Howard turned in an amazing performance. And although the Belgians beat the U.S. 2-1 with all goals coming after extra time, Team USA has reason to return home with their heads held high. So the top 8 teams have now all been decided, and you can catch the quarterfinalists in action on Friday and Saturday local time.
Well, as we see off 24 teams from the 2014 FIFA World Cup, we all know that it's not about pure talent or skills that got the top 8 to the next round.
Right, you also need a little bit of luck. Well, in Salvador, Brazil, we have plenty of stories of how some fans believe their superstitions and rituals help their teams score against their superior opponents.
They range from wearing the same pair of shorts for as long as their team is winning,
or leaving a sacrificial chicken and other offerings on a street corner. Many fervent soccer fans in Salvador and beyond believe that they have played a role in their team's fate.
Simon Johnson moved to Salvador in 1993, rooted for his favorite local club team in Vitoria, wearing the same Bermuda shorts, and the team went on to reach the Brazilian finals. And the shorts, washed so many times, gone from black to gray.
Well, Augustus Caesar, a Roman Catholic priest, has another theory. He says soccer is a game like everything in life, and though you can never tell what's going to happen when the ball starts rolling, it never hurts to ask for a little protection from above. So a little protection from above, huh? Well, what about the weather? Do we have protection from the above for the weather? Let's go over to our Michelle Park. Michelle, we had a mild and sunny day today, but and then there was that big shower just now. So are we expecting more of that tonight?
Yes, actually, just moments ago, it's been pouring here in the capital, and we are expecting more to come. And it's already been raining down south in the day and through the whole day.
So can we expect more wet and slippery conditions tomorrow?
Well, yes, actually, we're expecting a nationwide rain tomorrow and throughout this whole week. In fact, we can expect our first monsoonal rain tomorrow here and all over the central region. And the amount of the rain that we can expect tomorrow in the central region is between 5 to 40 millimeters and 20 to 60 in the Chungcheong-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces and up to 100 in the southern region. So make sure to bring out your umbrellas on heading out. Now, going over to our temperature readings, so we'll top out at 21 in the morning and up to 26 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak up to 25 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 27, Dokdo at 22, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 23. Now, as for the weather conditions at the World Cup in Brazil, unfortunately, there's no rain in the forecast for the next games. However, it will be hot with highs in the upper 20s. Well, that's all for now. Michelle Park, and back to you guys.
And that wraps things for us. This is Daniel Chen, thanking you for watching.
And I'm Moon Ganyang. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.